So, thank you so much for joining me on this tutorial, this amazing tutorial that I put together for you. I hope that this knowledge that I'm passing on to you is you find it valuable as I found it interesting when I discovered it. Before we begin, I would like to do something that I think is important. It at least it's important to me. So I'd like to say a little prayer. Heavenly Father, thank you for this day, and thank you for the ability to be able to share knowledge with the people who are watching this video right now. The person who's on the other side of the screen. Father, Lord, I thank you for their life. And Lord, I pray that you will use this moment to impact knowledge and wisdom onto the person listening to my voice. Thank you, Heavenly Father, for in Jesus' mighty name we have prayed. Amen. Okay, so the goal of this tutorial is for me to be able to pass this knowledge that I find very interesting onto you. And what is this knowledge? Is the ability for you to package your Unreal Engine creation, I would say. So if you've built a scene in Unreal Engine, you've put things together, they look really nice. But the problem is the visualization looks nice, but then the client or the person you've sent it to may want to change the layout of things in the file, so to speak. They may want to move things around a little bit. They may want to just change the placement of the furniture, the way the light fixture looks in the ceiling. They may want to move it around a little bit, or at least have multiple layouts that they can share with other people that they are wanting to share the project with. So with that in mind, I want to lay this out and show you how you would do that. Now, one of the things that I will want to remind you about is the fact that this tutorial, I should say, is not going to cover 3D modeling. It's not going to cover anything related to lighting, texturing, or all of those things that make a scene beautiful. I am not going to be covering that in this tutorial. This tutorial is focused primarily on the ability to save and reload your layouts at runtime. I will show you how to do all of that. Now, the other requirements that you need, the other two requirements I should say you need are one, you need to have a little bit of a prior knowledge of blueprints and how blueprints work in Unreal Engine. If you don't have that knowledge, you're going to struggle a little bit. It's going to be a little bit of a struggle. I will try my best to make it concrete. I will try my best to make it simple so that you can understand it. But if you don't have a prior knowledge, I suggest you go get some knowledge before you watch this tutorial. The second thing that you're going to have to do is, if you've never packaged a project in Unreal Engine before, if you understand how to build things in Unreal, but you've never packaged a project into an exe file before, you need Visual Studio. And you need the community version. You don't need a full paid version. So here's what that looks like. In order for you to do that, you're going to have to come to, you just type into Google or a search engine of your choice, and you go to, you just type in Visual Studio, and Visual Studio Community will come up. So if I go back one, I just use Bing to search for Visual Studio, and I clicked on Community, and this is where I got. So Community takes me here, and I can download remember, it's the free version, which is the Community. So Visual Studio Community is the free version. There's a full version that's a paid version. You don't want that. You want the community version of it. That's the one that's going to help you. So once you've downloaded it, it's going to take you through some installation requirements and things that you need to install. And I will show you all the things you need to install so that you don't install the things you don't really need. So if we come to Visual Studio here, for a sec, and I go into tools and I say get tools and features. So if I click on that, it's going to load some things in the background. It's just loading the features that I may want to install. Now I'm going to maximize this so you can see it fully. Now, these are the things that I had to install. So these are the requirements that I had to install in order for me to be able to package my game in Unreal Engine. The first thing I installed was I made sure that the Python development package was installed. The Node.js development package is installed. So Node.js, you can see Node.js here. And then Node.js just means JavaScript. That's for web development. And then desktop development with C++. This one's important. So I had that installed. And then the mobile development with C++, I also installed that. Even though it's deprecated, I made sure I installed that as well. Now we come to the very important ones that you have to install. Without these two, you cannot package your project as an exe file. So what you want to do is install under gaming, make sure you install the game development with Unity. You install that, and game development with C++. And you can see underneath it does say use the full power of C++ to build professional games powered by DirectX, Unreal, and Coco 2D. So you need those in order for you to be able to package your game in Unreal Engine, of course. So once all of that's installed, I'm not going to go through the installation process because I've done it before. You can find tutorials online that's going to show you how to do that. We're not going to waste time on that here. I'm going to assume you can do all of that yourself, because if you're using Unreal Engine, it means you're quite smart and you have your wits about yourself and you understand how to navigate the internet to find solution. So I'm not going to go through that. You can do that on your own. So once you've done all of that, you've had everything installed. Now is the time when we're going to go into Unreal Engine, and that's what I'm going to show you. We're going to be going through the process of writing the blueprints that you need in order for you to do the runtime layout tool. We're going to go through all of the things that you need. And where we're going to start right now, as you can see, I'm starting with a blank scene. The reason why I always start with a blank scene and I make sure that Unreal Engine starts with a blank scene is because whenever there's a little bit of corruption in an Unreal Engine file, I don't want that level that's opening, or the scene, so to speak. So scenes in Unreal Engine are called levels. So the level I'm in right now is called main, and that's typically what I name the level that's going to be empty in my project, and that's the startup level. It's always empty, nothing in it, no lights, no objects, nothing. This is because if for some reason, if my project seemed corrupt and I still need to be able to have access to it, at least it's going to load this level that's empty. So that's why I always have an empty level that I load on start. But let's go into the main level that we're going to be working in. So I'm just going to wait for that to load for a second, and then once it's loaded, we'll get right into the things that we're going to be doing. Right now, I have an error showing up here, and this has to do with Ultra Dynamic Sky that I'm using in here. Again, like I said, I am not going to be talking about lighting or anything of that nature in this tutorial. I am just going to be focused on how we can get the blueprints that we need showing up here and working properly for us to be able to do the runtime layout tool. So what I'm going to quickly do, because I don't like this message showing up here, it's distracting and I don't need it. So I'll just do disable all screen messages. and I'll just say enter, and it's going to get rid of that message on the screen, and we should be good there. So where do we begin? Um, the first thing that I'm going to have to explain to you is that there are two things required for our tool to work. The first one, I am not going to be coding with blueprints because I essentially didn't want to write that because that already is available in the marketplace, and I just grabbed that tool from the marketplace. So if you don't know what the marketplace is, it's the Unreal Fab marketplace for Unreal Engine, and you can grab all sorts of things there. Sometimes some things are free, and you can grab it there. So what the first thing we need is a way for us to select our object at runtime. And another first, so the same way you're able to do this in the engine, we want to be able to do that at runtime. So to be able to select the object, so I'll just say Control Z, put that back. And in order for us to do that, you need some kind of a tool at runtime that will let you do that. And that is what the runtime gizmo is. It's a blueprint that's on the marketplace that we're going to be placing into our scene for us to be able to navigate and select objects at runtime. And basically what that does is once you drop it into your scene, your level, it just gets all the static meshes in your scene and it makes them selectable at runtime. It's a pretty nifty tool. That is not going to be covered in this tutorial because that's not that's not what we're aiming for, at least. But it's one of the needed things. It's one of the needed tools, and it's already in this project. And by the way, this project is going to be packaged up. You should be getting an email saying that you can download this project. I'm going to pack it up for you so that you can download it. But this tutorial is to walk you through the implementation that will lead to you being able to select object at runtime, move them, save all of their positions and their location and the layout that you want, and then close the application, run it again, and load all of your saved selections, so to speak. So for us to begin, since I've shown you this blueprint, what I'll just do right now is just immediately just drop it into the scene. Boom. Here we go. That is already working. It's already working right now for us to be able to start from this location. For us to be able to select objects. Sorry for my misspeak there. So we're going to be able to select objects now at runtime with this in the scene. And in order for us to start from the right place, I would want to bring in a place start. So let me see if I can just drop a place start in here. And I'll just say place start and just grab a place start so that we can start from here. Now, the other thing that I will want to do is because of the navigation mode that I want to use, this blueprint does come. So the gizmo blueprint does come with a built-in navigation system in order for you to move around. I suggest you use that navigation system that comes with that blueprint, this blueprint. If you use it, your life is going to be a little easier, but you can design your own as well and just figure out how to merge it with your design, so to speak. So you merge the selection of objects at runtime with your own navigation. And in order for you to do that, you need to come to world settings. And right now you see that the game mode is set to, it's essentially set to, the B is set to none. Excuse me. So set to none, and then what you want to set it to is the BP helper game mode, and then it's going to automatically select the default pawn class, as a BP underscore spectator, which is what you need. So right now, if we just want to quickly test if our selection is working at runtime, what we can do here is just hit play. So our play start is starting from here. And if we select this object, you can see we can move them immediately. That's working. Now, if I move it this way, this will actually show you eventually what we're trying to code. So this is what your file will look like when you send it to your client. They can move stuff, but as soon as they quit, all the objects go back to the original positions. So if you've moved if they've made a layout for themselves, like, oh yeah, I want to rotate this furniture, I want to do this, I want to do that, and they do all of that, and then they quit. So they close the application you sent them. Everything will go back to normal, and they won't be able to save their changes. And we don't want that. We want them to have the ability to move things around and not call you in the middle of the night saying, hey, our presentation is tomorrow and we actually have a new layout now. Can you quickly make the changes in the file and then send us another build? You don't want that. Give them a build and let them do the work a little bit. Let them have the fun of moving the franchise around. Your value is in your ability to create something custom for them that makes their life easy. Not calling you at 2 a.m. in the morning or sending you an email when you're trying to have dinner with your family saying, hey, we changed the layout a little bit. We moved some furnitures around and we want you to change that so that we can present to our client. No, you don't want that. So now let's jump in and start working on actually creating the blueprint that's going to let you load things into Unreal Engine. So load things at runtimes. Sorry about my misspeak there. What I meant was that we're going to create all the blueprints that's going to let you load objects that they've changed their positions at runtime. So to begin, I'm just going to save first. And then what I'll do is I'll just collapse this. And I'm going to create. So let's see if I go to my content, I'm just going to create a new folder here. And then I will call that game, or let's just say layout underscore save. And then I'll just double click in there. Now comes the part that is very, very important, and you should be paying attention to this one. This is very important because you need this to actually be able to save and load things. So in Unreal Engine, there are lots of classes, object classes that are required for you to be able to do things. There is the game instance class. There is the save class, which lets you save things. And there are other classes like that as well that is important for you to be able to actually do the things that you need to do. So what we're going to do now is we're going to be creating the game save class that we need. So let's come over here and then we'll right click in the content drawer. And then what you want to do is go to blueprint class, and then you click on the drop down, and then you say save game. And then since none exists, we're creating a new one. So if you click on that, and now we're going to name it. Be careful about naming so that you can remember things when you name them. What I'm going to be doing here is I am going to be naming this something that is related to what we're doing. So in order for you to name blueprints, we always start with BP. and then I'll say underscore. What we're going to be doing, what we're doing is we're saving the positions of the objects into a file. That's the main thing we're doing in this file. And you can do a bunch of other things in the file as well, but our main focus is saving the positions and position, location, and things like that of the objects that we want to move into a file. And this is the save file that's going to be holding all of that information. So in Unreal Engine, so location, rotation, and scale all combine into a single thing called transforms. So we're saving this transform of all the objects that we've selected and moved. And that's what we're going to be calling this. So we'll call it BP save transform. And we say OK. And we say save here and save selected. Now we can double click that and open it. So now that we've opened it, what we want to do is just leave that open and just go back into our level again. And now this time around, we're going to be creating something that we also need that is very important as well. So inside our content drawer again, we're going to the layout save folder, and we'll right click again. But this time around, we want to be creating something called a struct. If you don't know what a struct is, and if I come to, I always forget where the struct is. So it's usually under blueprint. Yes, under blueprint structure. So structure is just like think of it like an Excel document, that lets you actually put things in it, like a data table of sort. So you have, say for instance, you have the name of the object and then what that input is. So the name and the input, the position and the input, just like that. So what are we going to call this? We're going to be calling it structure underscore mesh transforms. Because we're moving meshes around, we're going to be moving static meshes. That's what we're going to be calling it. So we'll call it ST underscore mesh transforms. And now we're going to double click it to open it. And you can see it's already added a variable for us. So in here, we're going to be adding just two variables. That's all we need. The first variable we need to be tracking is the name of the object. And second thing will be the transform. So the actor transform. We want the name of the actor and the transform of the actor. So things in your level are called actors. So there's the static meshes are actors, and then other objects in your scene can be actors as well in your level, I should say. I typically interchange scenes and levels because, for 3D artists and architecture visualization artists, it's mostly a scene, but in Unreal Engine, it's called a level. So we're going to call this the first variable. We're going to call it actor name. Actor name. So what I always use a camel case. A camel case is just when you're naming things in programming language. A camel case is the first letter is always uppercase, and then the next word is going to start with an uppercase as well. So capital letter, and then another capital letter. So actor name. And then the variable type we see here is a Boolean. Name is never a Boolean. So a name is either a string or another variable type called name. So in this case, we're not going to use a string. We're just going to use a variable type called name. So we'll say that. And then we'll come up here to the plus sign that says add variable. We'll click on that. And then now is when we change this. Instead of the member of var underscore 3, we're going to be calling this one the actor transform. Okay. And then the variable type for this is going to be transform. It's not a vector, it's not a rotator, it's a transform. So once we've done that, we're good to go. We've set our structure now. The structure only has two data type that we need. We have a name type and then the transform type. So those are the two things we have to keep track of. If we can find the name of the object, we can store the name, and then we can store the transform of the object into a file so that we can call that later. Later on, you see how I'm going to be using this information to actually load objects, load their positions into your scene. So once we have that, we'll come back to our BP transform. And then what we want to do is we want to create a new variable. In order to create a variable inside, remember, we're inside this BP transforms. Actually, I see the name is spelled wrong. So I'm just going to go into my content drawer here and just make sure I name it properly. Transforms. So good. That's named properly. Now, what I want to do is I'm going to click on the variables here and I want a new variable. So if I click on this and I will name this something that is unique so that we don't have a name clash on that object. So I'll just call it saved meshes. So let's see, saved. So say saved meshes, and then the type is going to be our struct that we called before. But one thing to understand is that we want to be using a different type of variable. So if I click down on this now, and what I'm going to be doing is I'll be looking for the struct that we created before, which is the SD underscore mesh. So that is the structure we're looking for. So I'll just click on that. Then we need to come to the right hand side, and the data type that we need, instead of just a single reference, we want, so instead of the single reference here, we want an array, because we're going to be storing all of the possible objects that we can change their positions into. We're just going to store them into an array and then call that array at runtime and query that array at runtime and say, hey, inside this array, I want you to do this operation for each object inside the array. And we'll get to that. I'll show you how to do that in a moment. So once we've done that, I'm just going to say compile and save. And then we'll go back to our test level for a second, open the content drawer. And one more thing that I need to create now is the game instance. In order for anything to actually work properly in Unreal Engine, the first thing that loads is the game. The game instance is highest on the list in terms of how things are loaded in Unreal. There are multiple things that load before the game instance, but the game instance has more priority than the player character, more than the player controller, more than the player pawn, even more than the hard classes and things like that. The game instance has more priority, and you want to create a game instance and load that game instance on start when you run your exe file. So that's what we're going to do now. If I right click now, and then I go to blueprint, and I'm going to be looking for a game instance. So if I say game instance, so we want to create a game instance. And then our game instance, we're just going to call it, we can call it BP underscore. Uh, I'll just, I'll just say my BP underscore layout game instance. I think that works. So we can call it that. I'll say save. And then I'll just double click on it to open it. Once we open our game instance, it's going to look empty. There's nothing in it. We just have the event graph. And this is where we're going to start making a lot of things that we'll need in order for us to be able to actually do the things we want to do. Um, so um, and later on, I'm going to create either a UI for us to be able to actually use the UI to launch things in Unreal Engine. Instead of using a keybind on the keyboard to save and load, I'm just going to create a simple UI that I can add to the screen for us to be able to load things. So once we have the game instance open, inside the game instance is where we're going to be putting all the logic, most of the logic, I should say, that is going to let us save and load. And then we're going to be calling those logic inside of our UMG, which is the user interface that we're going to create later on. I'm just going to create something very simple. It's not going to be something complex so that you can be able to follow it as well. I've created really fancy UI in the past, but this one's going to be very simple. So. All right. So in our game instance, what we want to do inside our game instance is that we're going to be creating some variables, and then we'll also create some functions as well. So a function is just something you can call in a different place so that you can be able to actually not write things in multiple places. It's very ideal to kind of write a function in one place and then call the function in other areas so that you don't have to rewrite functions all the time. So first thing we're going to do now is since we know that we're going to be needing a few things like say for instance a reference for the transforms of the object that we want to save, and then we're going to be needing a reference to the game, the save game. We're going to create all of those variables now so that we can actually utilize them. The other thing that we need to remember is that, you know, the actor name is something that we are going to be referencing, and that either takes in a name or a string. So a string is just a bunch of characters, one after the other. And the transform is just like I said before, the scale, the location and rotation of the object that you're talking about, or the object you're referencing. So inside the BP layout game instance, we're going to click on the variable, and then the first one we want to create is going to be the name of the the slot for the game that we're going to be saving. So we want to create a slot name for the game that we're going to be. Actually, before we do that, let me just create the ones that we've talked about so that you're not getting confused. So The ones we've talked about is the BP save transform, which is the save game blueprint class that I created initially. So which is this one. So we're going to need a reference to that for sure. So I'm going to create that now. So I'll just say current save game is the variable name that I'll call it. So save game, and then I will call a reference to BP save transform. So I'll just say BP and the underscore save transform. And I'm calling an object reference to this. So if I say compile and save, now I have that. This is the first thing we need to create. I was trying to talk about a lot of things that I hadn't referenced initially, and I figured I was confusing you, so I decided not to do that. So what I'm doing now is I've created a reference, so a variable for a reference to the BP save transforms. So this guy, which is the save game. Now that we have that, we can now start to write a simple logic that is going to initialize this save game, because this variable, if you look here, it says current save game, but the value here is none. If you run this at runtime and you call this variable, it is always going to fail. This is why you would get an error like this that says, try to I forget the name of the error. It's typically access none. So access none is the error you typically get if you try to run something and you haven't initialized a variable and the value of the variable equals none. It's going to tell you, hey, I tried to run this thing, but this thing doesn't have any value in it. That's why a lot of people, when they create blueprints and they create a reference to a blueprint class that they've created, and at runtime they click on it, they run the game, and then they get an error and it's an access none error. That's typically what happened. So what we're going to be doing here initially is for us to create a way for that not to happen, for that error not to happen. So in order to do that, we're just going to right click in here and say init, say event init. So we'll call event init. So event initialize. So we're initializing, we're calling an initial run so that our variable is going to be initialized. And so off of the event init, what we're going to be calling is the thing that we want to do. You say, okay, does save game exist? So does save game exist. And then now that we see this, we can kind of see the things that we need. So does save game exist? And off of this, you can see the return value. There's a boolean in here, and we'll get to that in a second. But the first variable we're going to have to create is the slot name. So you can type in the name here if you want, but I will advise against that because you want to be using this in multiple places. So what I typically do is I will just create this as a variable. So I'll right click on here and say promote to variable. And then I'm going to change the variable name into, I'll just call it current slot name. So current slot name. Let's say okay. So I'll just grab it, put it down here, and you can see I need to compile first in order for it to have its own name. So, and then I'll just call this save slot underscore 01. that's the value. So it's gotten its value. We created the variable name. It's a string, which is the name of the slot that we're going to be saving to. This is very, very important. You're going to find that this thing here is going to be important in just a moment. Once we've done that, like I said, the return value off of this is a boolean. So whenever you see this red thing, it's a boolean. So off of this boolean, you're just going to pull out of this, and we're going to do an if statement. So if we say, either you type in if, or you can type in branch. So either or. So we're branching off of this. So we're saying, does save game exist? If that is true, we want to do a few things. And if it's false, we want to do something else as well. So that's where we're going to start. Now we're going to say, okay, if it's true, we'll say load game from slot. So click on that. And now you can see the reason why I said to create this as a variable, because if that wasn't the case, you would have to type in the name every single time, and that just creates recipe for disaster, because typing things manually and not using references to variables you've created before can lead to errors that you will never find when your blueprint becomes larger and larger. Your blueprint scripts, I should say, becomes larger and larger. So because we've created that string before, we've created the variable with the string, the current slot name is what we're going to be putting in here. So we'll grab that and we just put it on top, and that just slots right in there beautifully. The user index you're going to leave at 0, because here we left it at 0 as well. So I'll just drag this and just put it down below here so that it's nice and clean. And now what we're going to be doing is we're going to be casting to our BP save transform that we created initially, so which is the save game. Now, because the class that this is looking for is a save game class, you shouldn't have a problem just cast into the BP save transform. So what we're going to do is we'll drag this out and we'll just say cast to BP underscore save transform. So we get that. And now this is where we're going to be setting this variable so that it's initialized. So if we now say current save game and we just do a set, so we'll grab that and we say set, and we just connect this like so, like so, and we say compile and save. And now you're not going to, whenever you run this or you call this variable somewhere, you're not going to run into an error, access none error. So that's the side of the true side off of this branch. Now we need to talk about the false side. So we're saying, okay, does save game exist? And then we say, if that is true, load game from slot, a slot that we've already named, and then cast to BP transform, and then set the save game. So we're setting it. So, and all of this is on initialize. So event init to so that we can initialize this BP save transform. All right, off of the false now, we'll just say if, so again, does save game exist? If it doesn't exist, if the answer is false, then what we want to do is create save game object. So we'll say create save game object. And then what class are we going to be calling? It's the BP save transform class. So say BP save transform, we'll call that. And then again, we want to make sure we're setting this BP save transform. So we set it. We get that variable and we set it like so. And that's all you need. You initialize this, it's never going to get you an access none. So whenever you have any variable that you've created and you know you're going to be accessing a lot, make sure you initialize it. If you do not initialize the variable, you are going to be getting errors. The access none error is quite common in Unreal Engine a lot, and this is one of the best ways for you to be able to actually solve that problem if that shows up for you. Great, we're moving right along, and this is coming together really nicely. We've initialized the variable that we need, and now we're going to be creating some variables that I think is important for us to have in here. So we don't have any transform variable in here, and we don't have any slot name variable in here, which, although actually I should say we already have a slot name down here. So never mind that. What we need to create now is the transform variable that we can call. So what I'll do is I'll just say new variable by clicking the plus sign, and I'll just call this saved transform. Just save transform. And you already know what this is going to be. It's going to be a transform type variable, and it's not going to be an array of any sort. The only time we need an array is if we come back to our BP save transform here. We already created an array here, so that's the only array we need. You don't need an array inside of your game instance. We just need a save transform. We need a single variable reference. Okay, so since we've already done that, the next thing we need to do now is to start to create how we're going to be saving the transforms to a file so that we can load them again. So the first thing we need to do is create a way for us to save, and then we need to create, after that, we create a way for us to load it. In order for us to do that, we're going to put that in a function. So I'm just going to compile and save to make sure that everything's all good. So save transform is here. Although I often wonder why Unreal does this where there's a negative sign here, but I'll just leave it. It doesn't matter. Okay, so like I said before, we're going to be creating two functions. One to load, one to save our transforms, and then the other is to load all of the transforms that we've saved so that the positions of the objects that we've moved at runtime can be loaded. So with that said, what I'll do here is I'll just come to functions here, and I'll click the plus sign, and I will call my new function save transform. Okay, so once we've done that, we'll just grab that, and then we can begin. So in order for us to save the transforms, we need a few things that is going to help us. So let's start by doing one thing. The first thing we'll do is we're going to get our game instance. So we'll say get game instance. So we'll call the function get game instance, and then we'll call we're going to cast to our game instance that we created, because when you launch, when you launch Unreal Engine as a runtime thing, so if you've packaged your game and you launch it, the Unreal Engine does something on the back end where it creates the game instance for you. So what we're going to be doing is to force Unreal Engine to use our game instance and create that at runtime. So I'll just say cast to BP layout game instance, and then we can connect that here. And then what we want to do is call current save game off of that. So we can do that because the other thing I can certainly do is to actually call I can try to just say another cast, right? I can say cast to BP save let's see, BP underscore save. Actually, it will let me cast to that. So either way, since I've initialized this current save game, I'm just going to be calling it, and that's all I need. So I'll just say current. So I'll just say get current save game. And then remember inside this current save game. So if I say current save game is a variable that we created, but it's a reference to the save transform. So if we go back into the save transform, what do we have in here? We have our struct. So I need to call this guy. I need to call this variable so that we can access it. The information we need is in this struct. And we've referenced this struct in our BP save transform, which we call saved meshes. So now if I go back to our game instance, which is here, what I'll do is I'm going to be calling our saved meshes. So if I call saved meshes, so I'll say get saved meshes. So now that I've gotten it, what do I want to do? What I want to do is I want to get the array. So this, I've called this, and I know that this array is here. I want to get the array, but I don't want to deal with anything that's inside the array previously because I don't know if the array is empty or not. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be clearing the array first. So I'll just call clear. So let's call clear to clear the array out. And then I'll just plug this back in here like so. So far so good. We're looking okay. Now, what do I want to do with the array that I've gotten in here? There are only two things you can really do with an array. Is you off of the array, you want to be doing a for loop or something like that. But before we get to that, before we even get to any of that, what are we actually trying to do here? What is the goal? Our goal is very simple. We're trying to get all of the static meshes in our scene. So if we go back to our level, this is a static mesh, this is a static mesh, this is a static mesh, this is a static mesh. Everything in here is a static mesh, right? Now, what we want to be able to do is we don't want to individually say, hey, static mesh A, static mesh B, static. No, we want to do a catch all for all of the static meshes in our scene. So in order for us to do that, we'll go back to our game instance and then we'll say off of here, we can just say get all actors of class. So we'll say get all actors of class. And what class are we looking for? The static mesh class. So we'll say static mesh. Actor is the class that we're looking for. And then what do we want to be doing off of that? What are we trying to do? Off of that, we need to do a for loop. So we'll do a for loop. So for each loop, and then what information are we trying to access? Remember, when we created our struct, there are two things in our struct that we find important that we need: the name of the actor and the transform of the actor. With that information in mind, let's go back in here. Since we're saying, hey, get all actors of class, and the actor type on the actor class we're trying to get is a static mesh. What are we trying to do for each element in the array? Remember, this is an array. So getting all actors of class is an array. What are we trying to do with the array? Inside the array, we're trying to get the name of the object and the transform of the object. Those are the two things important to us right now for us to be able to get. So out of this, we can just say get object name. We do that. Now that is going to turn into a string. Don't worry about that. We can convert that back into a name. And I'll show you how to do that in a moment. And then the second thing we want to get is get actor transform. So we want to get again, remember, we're doing this for each element in the array. It's not just, just one object, just the entire array. I mean, but what we're trying to do is get it for every single object in the array. So for each object in the array, what task are we trying to perform? For each object in the array, we're trying to get the object name, and then we'll say get actor transform. Get actor transform. So once we get that, we'll just keep that for now. One thing I'll do right away is, since this is a name as a string, sorry, and what we're essentially trying to get in our struct, remember in our struct we created a name, and if we go back in here, the object name, the return value we see here is a string type. But if we go to our struct that we created, we are using a type called name. So in order for it to be useful to us, we just have to convert it to a name. So we can say to, if you just say to name, I think you can do a to name, string to name. Yes. So if you do a string to name, you just get that node. It shows up for you. But we're going to leave that for now. Now comes the tricky part. So because in Unreal Engine, you can a struct is not just something where for this one, say for instance, this variable in here, we can always grab a variable and do a get, or we can do a set. So if I grab this and say set, I'll just say grab that and do a set. We can do that with those variables. But now in here, since it's a struct, we can't really do that. So what we need to do for structs is we have to break the structs out into their elements, their components, I should say. So off of this, you're going to drag and say break, and it's going to do for each loop with break. That's one thing. And then you say break again, break st underscore mesh transform again, and then you disconnect this guy, and then do make st mesh transform. I know it sounds very complicated, but just follow me on this one, and it's going to make your life so much easier. So once we have this, these are the two elements we need. Remember, if you check here, we have the actor transform, the return value is a transform. You need to pipe that back into a transform. And this, you need to pipe back into a name. So we can get rid of this one, and we can get rid of this as well, and just grab this and just come all the way here. And now when we connect this and we connect this to the transform, we are golden. But we're not done yet. We're not done yet. So we need to do one more thing in order for this to work out for us. We still need two more things that we're going to have to do. But the immediate thing that we have to do right away is we have to now add all of these components back into an array again. So what we're going to do now is off of this array, we're just going to grab this guy and we'll say add. And then we'll say add. And then we add the results of combining everything that we've grabbed from the for loop into here. So we grabbed everything, we added it back, and then we'll connect this back here like so. And that should grab all the things that we need. And then everything should be put into an array. It's going to write it back into an array for us. We'll say compile and save. And then the last thing we want to do is we want to save the game to a slot. So off of on complete, we just say save game to slot. So what is the asset it needs? It needs the save game. So we'll grab the save game. Here's the asset it needs. We'll put that in there. What is the slot name? Is the current slot name. Put that in there. And voila. We are now done. We are done with the save portion. So this is all you have to do in order for you to write the data, the transform into a file. So again, like I said before, we did a cast to the game instance. We grabbed our save game. We grabbed the save meshes from the BP save class that we've created called the BP underscore save transforms. And I'll just compile and save in here. And then we got all actors of class. And what class did we need? We needed the static mesh actor. And then off of that, we did a for loop. Out of the for loop, we grabbed the object name, we grabbed the transform, the actor transform, and then we made a struct out of the saved meshes, and we piped that in and added that to an array. Once that's done, we now on complete, once the for loop is complete, we just save game to slot. We use the variable we created initially for the slot called save slot underscore 01, and we just put that in here. And the save game asset that's needed to be saved, we piped back in here. So that's all we need to do for this function. This function is ready to be used at any time. Now, since we already have our save mode, a way for us to save the transform, now we're going to create another function called load transforms. So we'll come up here and do that. And then we'll call this load transforms. Once that's loaded, once that's made, we can just say compile and save. And then we want to write our logic that's going to let us just load all the things that we've saved initially. So off of this, we're just going to say load game from slot immediately. So load game from slot. And then the slot name is going to be the name was created, the variable already created initially, and then the user index is going to be the user index is going to be 0. So off of this, we want to cast to our save game. So our BP save transform, let's just say cast to BP save transform. And then as usual, you already know what's coming. We're going to be getting this guy. This is the information we need, but where can we find that information? It's in here. And what did we call that variable? Saved meshes. So saved meshes is what we're going to be getting now. So if I drag off of here, I call saved meshes. So I'm getting it. That's the information we need. And off of it, I need a for loop. So I'll just do a for loop. For each loop, I'll connect the pin back here. And again, remember, we need to be breaking things out for structs. So in order for me to get the information that I need out of this array, I need to break the elements in here into the single elements. So the actor name and the actor transform, I need to break them out of this array element. So I'll just call break. Like so. I have what I need there. And then again, what am I performing this operation on? I'm performing this operation on actor of all class. And the class that I'm performing it on is the static mesh class. So how do we do that again? We do a get all actors of class. The class we're getting is the static mesh actor class. So we'll just type that in. Let's see, static mesh actor. Yep, that's the class we're getting. Again, this gives me an array, and I have to do a for loop again. So for each loop. Now that we've got that, the information I want to get out of this is the object name. And this is where I don't know if you remember when I said earlier that this actor name is going to be important. The reason I said that initially is because that is the tag or the ID we're going to be using to cross-reference what we need to move. So because the information is already in here and the saved meshes when I load the game from slot, now what I'm going to be doing is, since I already saved it, so if we go back to save transform for a second, I got the information about the object name and I wrote that into an array and I saved it into a file. Now, upon loading, it's already loaded that information. And I'm saying, okay, since you've loaded that information for me, great. I need the names of the object in the scene that I have, and I need to compare it to the data in my file. If the data is equal, do something. So we'll perform that logic in a moment so that you can see what I mean by that. So off of this, I'll do a get object name. Again, remember, we have to convert this back to a name in order for it to work for us here. So I'll say so string to name. So I'm doing a string to name here. And then off of this, I'm going to be doing an equal. So and the reason I'm doing this is very simple. I'm saying for each object in the static mesh actor class that's going through this loop. Get the object name. Now, I have data about object names in my saved meshes from the save game. I want you to compare the two. If they are equal, so I'm saying, you see this equal sign, I'm getting the name here. If they are equal, so I'll just combine the two like so. And you see the return here is a Boolean. So what do we normally do with a Boolean? We have to do an if statement. So we'll go if, which is a branch, and then we'll just connect this branch back here. We'll go down like so. And then what are we trying to do? We are trying to set the actor's transform. Remember, if an object has been moved and you save that data, when you close the executable file, everything's going to return back to normal. But you've already saved that transform into a file. Now, what you want to do is compare the name in the data that you've saved and then use that name to set the transform of that actor by calling the saved file. If this is very confusing, try to think about the logic in your head. You moved an object, you wrote the position down on paper, and then you closed your file without saving. So that's essentially what you did. And now when you loaded your file again, everything returned to normal, but you wanted the position, you want to move that same object back to the position that you saved, that you wrote on paper. This is essentially what you're doing automatically here. So the object is moved, but you don't remember it anymore. The game doesn't remember it anymore, but you're calling that information. Because you have so many static mesh actors in your scene, how can you possibly remember what position is what? That's why we initially first got the object name and we compared that name to the name we have saved in our save file. And then if the condition, if they're equal, and it's true that they're equal, what we want to do is set actor transform. So we do a set actor transform. Actually, I'll just grab it from here so that it's easier. Set actor transform. So if we do and that is if it's true. If it's true, set actor transform. Now, what transform are we setting? That's the transform data from the save data. So we just grab that and plug that in here, and boom, we are done. Compile, save, and we're done. So we now have two functions. So we have one function that's the saving function that saves all the data that you need, saves the name and the transform to a file. And now we have a way to load that information so that at runtime, we can call that information and we'll be good. So I'm going to stop here for now, and then I'll pick back up and show you how to use all of that information at runtime by creating a user interface with two buttons, which is going three buttons actually, a way for us to quit the application, a way for us to save, and a way for us to load. So I will come back and give you all of that information. So let's pick up where we left off. In the last section of the video, we left off where we actually completed the load transform function that we created. and we've got all of the logic in place. So now what we want to do is create the buttons that are going to be receiving this function, or the buttons that are going to call this function. I should say the two functions we've created, the save and the load transforms. So in order to do that, we'll come into our folder and we just right click, and then we can go to user interface and create a widget blueprint. And then we're just going to click on user widget, and then we'll call it WBP underscore layout. And we can double click on it right away to open it up. What we'll do now is we'll just drop in a canvas panel. We drop in a canvas panel, and then we'll grab another canvas panel and just layer it in between. And then this is going to be our taskbar. So we'll just call this taskbar because that's the location we're going to be putting our button in. So just call task bar. And then the anchor for this is going to be the lower portion of the screen. So we'll just anchor it down below. And then I'll grab it and just put it down here and stretch it out like so to fill the entire screen. And then what I want to do is just make sure that this is sized properly. So I may just push it up a little. So if I grab it, I'll just move it slightly. I may have accidentally moved the wrong thing. So I selected this and I can just push it up slightly. I think that's fine. Where it's at the moment, that's okay. It's slightly offset from the bottom of the screen, but that's fine. So the next thing I want to do is maybe I'll just put a background blur down below. So just do background blur, grab that, put that inside there. And amount of blur that I'm going to be using, maybe strength will be 20 or something like that. So I'll just do 20 to put a background blur in there, and I'll make it fill the sized content. Let's see if actually let's not do that. Let's grab it and just fill this whole space up. So if I grab it all the way, and I'll just pull it like so that we have blur all the way through. And then I'll just put a border in here as well. So let's put a border in here. So border. Grab the border and just put that down below as well. And I just let's see. I'll just put some padding on the border as well, and just do maybe on the left side, maybe we'll just do a 4, and then we'll do a 2 here, and we'll do a 4 and a 2. So 4 and a 2, just to have the sizing of the border. We don't necessarily need the border, but I kind of like having that border in there. Maybe that works for us. Essentially, actually, you know what? I'm going to remove the border because there was something I had in my head in designing, but I don't think we need the border. So I'll remove the border for now. And then what I'll do is I'll put a horizontal box in here. So we need an horizontal box. So horizontal box, we'll grab that and we'll put that in here, parented to the taskbar. You can see the horizontal box is here, and the anchoring for the horizontal box will be the whole thing. So it's anchored all the way out here, which is good. And then we can stretch it all the way. We can stretch it all the way across. So we'll just stretch it like so to fill the entire space. And that should be good. And then we have some padding for our horizontal box. We can do a little bit of offset if we want, but I think we're okay right now. So inside our horizontal box, we can start to put the things that we need. So the first thing we need is a size box to go with our buttons. So we'll put a size box in there. Grab the size box, we'll put it inside our horizontal box. You can see our size box is now here. And then inside our size box, we're going to have our buttons. We're going to have one button, I should say. So we'll put the button. So I'll grab the button and then we put the button in there. And then we'll call this button. We'll just call this button the save button. Button underscore save. And then inside this button, we're going to be putting our horizontal box again. So let's grab another horizontal box. And then we'll place that in there like so. So now inside of our horizontal box, we can now place our text in there. The text that's going to be our the name of the button, the display name of the button. So I've got the horizontal box, and then inside the horizontal box, we'll place our text. So I'll grab the text, and we'll place it in there. And now things are looking good. So we have our text. Text is looking good. We can reduce the size of our text to something like so. And then we can call this save scene. So that's good. Now things are lining up properly, which is good. And then what we want to do now is we can duplicate our size box. Let's see. So if we grab that, we grab our size box, we can duplicate it by pressing Control D. And that would just automatically put it next to the other button. We can put an offset, or we can put a spacer in between the two. So that's what I'm going to do. So I'll just grab a spacer. And I'll just put a spacer right in between the two. Right there. So I'll just collapse all of this, the two size boxes, and then the spacer, I can change the size of the spacer. So I think if if I go like so, that's just to put a gap in between the buttons. So I'll just put that space in there. And then I'll come back to the text on this one and then just call the text here. I'll say load scene. Load scene. And then the last button we're going to create is going to be the quit button. So a way for us to exit the game. So I'll just say Control D again. And that should automatically create another button for us. And then we'll grab this spacer, or maybe we'll just grab another spacer here and put it in between like so. And then that helps us. And then the first spacer, I want to reduce the distance here. So I'll just say 2 here because that gap seems a bit high. Or maybe 1. Yeah, 2. Or I'll just do 5. 10. And then I'll grab this spacer and do 10 as well. Okay. So we now have 3 buttons down below here, which is pretty good. And these are the buttons we're going to be adding to our screen. And we're going to be using those buttons to load, save, and quit the application. So this last text, I'll just call this quit. Mm, just call this maybe quit. Yeah, that's fine. Again, I'm not spending too much time on the button creation. I just want to show you the mechanisms that I use to create buttons. And also, I have to name these buttons correctly so that their functionality is apparent. So I'll call this quit. And then this one, I will call load. So button load. Excellent. I'm not going to worry about the sizing of this one because that's not the goal of this tutorial. To design a proper UI, you would have to actually size this properly, but I'm not going to worry about that. That's a tutorial for another day. This tutorial is not about UI creation. So once we have that, what I want to do now is to actually show you where you're going to be implementing the UI. First, you have to add the UI to the screen. So we have to make sure that our UI can be displayed on the screen first before we can push any buttons. So in order for us to do that, we need to be able to add the UI to an actor that's going to be running the scene. So we could either do it in our game instance or we can do it somewhere else. So I'm going to choose to do it in our a BP spectator, which is in here. If I double click on this and I go into the spectator that's controlling the scene, and I want to write a separate code here that I'm going to be adding down below here. That's just going to display the UI onto the screen. So to do that, I'm going to create a custom event here. So I'll just say custom event. So and then I'll call this create underscore UI underscore menu. So I'll just call it that. So we've got that. And then off of that, I'll just say create widget. So what widget are we creating? It's the WBP layout. So we'll look for WBP layout. And then we're going to set the variable for it. So we'll just promote to variable, and then we'll call this BP underscore, just say screen widget. And then again, it's a reference to the WBP layout. So we'll have that. And then we'll say add to viewport. So like so. And then say compile and save. Now that we have this custom event, we can just call the custom event in here. It'll say create UI menu. If you right click here and just say create UI menu, we'll call this custom event, and then we'll just pipe it in here, and we should be okay. And that should work for us. So we're going to test that right now and see what happens. So we'll just hit play, and we have all our buttons down below here. So that's great. Now that we have buttons, we can quit the application. And then what we're going to do now is we're going to go back into our spectator and just move this down somewhere so that we can comment it, and just hit the select everything and hit the C key, and then say main UI. And so just comment it that way so that when someone comes in here, they can know exactly where what this is for. Great. Now that that's done, we're now going to go into our widget and actually call all of the functions that we created to load and save. So remember the name of the functions that we're looking for. And where are we going to be calling those? It's inside our widget blueprint. If you've ever done this before where you're using a button to call a function, you should be very familiar with what I'm about to do. So now for the save, I'm just going to select the save button. And then what I'm going to do is on clicked, I'll just select the plus sign here, click on it. That should take me into the event graph. And all I have to do is just first cast to, well, I can cast to, or what I will do here is just get an actor of class, because the spectator is what I'm looking for. So I can just say get actor of class, actor of class. And then what actor am I getting? I'm getting the BP underscore spectator, this guy. And then what do I want from this guy? Well, what am I looking for? Is there a function that I actually, no, we're not looking for a function in there. Excuse me, that is wrong. What we're going to be doing is we're calling a function out of our game instance. That is what we should be doing. I got my steps wrong there. What I created in the spectator is the UI. We don't need to, the UI is already done. We're okay with the UI being displayed on the screen. What we need to do is call the game instance so we can get this function. So on this button clicked, we first want to do a get game instance. And then we say cast to. So we're casting to the BP layout game instance. Do that. And then the function we want to get out of this is the save. So we'll say save transforms. And then we'll call that function. And then compile and save. And then we'll do the same thing for load button. So if we go to load and we just scroll down below and we hit the plus sign again, unclicked. So unclicked, once the button is clicked, we can copy this again, C, Control V, and then off of this, we want to say load transform. So load transforms. So once we do that, we should be good. Compile and save. And then the last button is the quit button. So we want to have a way to quit our application. So we select that button. We'll come down below. We say click the plus sign, unclicked for the quit button, and we just say quit game. And that's it. So we have all three buttons that we need to access. We say compile and we say save. And now let's go ahead and test all of the things that we've done so far. So the first thing is we're going to just play the level, and then that starts us here. And we'll test the quit button. That quits the game. Perfect. That's working. Now, let's now go ahead and test again. I'm going to actually stop this for now and select the play start. And I'm going to rotate the play start because it's facing, I want it facing forward when we start the game. So if I move it back like so, because this play start is determining the position where we start from. So I'll hit play again, and now we should be facing the scene and we're moving right along. We can navigate around. And then what I want to be able to do is now I'm going to move things around. So I've got that. I'll move that. And I'll grab this and then move this out a bit. And now we've moved things around. First thing we want to do is save this out. So if I hit the save button and then I hit quit, right? And then this is the moment of truth. So once we start our application again, remember, this is the default state, right? So when I quit the application, it returns to the default state. But now when I play the application again, it's back to original. And if I hit the load button, I had to stop the video for a second because we ran into some errors. And now that we're back, there are a few things that I want to talk about that I hadn't mentioned earlier. So one of the biggest things that we need to make sure we do before we can get anything working, because initially, well, what I had done was I had ran through the application. So I hit the play button and then I selected the sofa and I moved it. And then I clicked on save, and then I stop in it. And then if we play back again and we hit load, it doesn't work. There are several reasons why it doesn't work. We're going to go through all of the reasons why things are not working at the moment, and I'll show you how to fix it. So what we need to do initially is that we made all of this logic inside our game instance. However, we have not told Unreal Engine which game instance it should use. We created a custom game instance, but we haven't told Unreal Engine which one to use. So that's what we're going to do now. And then if we want to do that, we will have to go over to Edit and then Project Settings. Inside our project settings, we can either look for it down below, down on the left-hand side of your screen. You can look for a section for the game instance. It's faster to just search for it. So you type in the search and just type in game instance. And we can see here the game instance class that's being used at the moment is called game instance, but we created a custom game instance that we want to use, and that's the one we're calling at the beginning of the game. So we're going to change it to BP layout underscore game instance. And that's the first thing we need to fix. So that should fix the calling of the game instance. So we can close out of this, and then we'll go back into our level. Before I play it, this alone isn't going to solve your problem. And as you're guessing, it won't work, but I'll show you. So let's hit play. And then I grab this, I move it, and I say save scene. And then I stop it. And then if I play again, and I say load scene, we get an error. And this error is very, very, very important. The error we're getting now, you can see there's an error being displayed down below. It says error/warning. So we're getting a lot of warnings in here, which is pretty good. One of the fatal error that we're getting, I will come back to this one. You can see down below, it's saying infinite loop detected. And this one, I have an inkling as to why this is happening, and we're going to solve this one last. But let's first address the first issue, the warning we're getting. Now it's saying mobility of, and then it's giving us the directory of the static mesh. So we're trying to move a static mesh. However, the static mesh is not set to movable. One of the things that you need to do in order for this to work is for you to set the static meshes that you want to move to movable. If you don't set them to movable, this will not work. So by default, when you select a static mesh, by default, they are set to static. So I'll just return this to static. I think I initially set it to movable, but I'll change this to static. And then for you to be able to move any of this furniture, you have to set it to movable in your level. So when you place objects in your level, you have to set them to movable so that they can be moved at runtime. What I mean by that is if you're storing their data and their data has to be fetched again, you have to set them to movable, or else the code we wrote in here inside a game instance to save the transform, this probably won't get up to here. It won't even process up to this point where it's been saved if they're not set to movable. So that's what we're going to do now. We're going to find the actors that we want to move. And for you, you may want to set all of the objects in your scene to movable, all the static meshes, I should say, to movable. But I would say you want to be selective about the data that you're storing. So I'm just going to quickly come in here and just select these objects. And then, like I said before, we saw multiple errors in there. The other error we saw was for the infinite loop. And we'll come back to that because I have a suspicion around why that's happening. So I'll just select these. And I can also use the outliner as well to select these as well. So I'll just come in here and just select them all. It's pretty easier. It's easy to select them in the outliner rather than just hunting in the level itself. So just going through and selecting all these furniture. There's quite a bit of them, and I'll just go through and just select them all. I'm probably selecting the ones that are not on this floor that I'm on at the moment. So and then if I just go through and just select all of these, and there's quite a bit of them, so I'll just keep selecting them, and you can fast forward through this whole thing of the selection if you want to, but if you want to keep listening to me or watch me select objects, feel free. And this is also because this scene wasn't organized for something like this. If I were to be doing this and I knew beforehand that this was the type of task that I would be performing in a scene like this, I probably would have organized my file a little different, but here we are. So once all of it is selected, I'll just set it all to movable. Now all of these furnitures should be movable at runtime. So I'll hit escape to deselect them. And then what we'll do again is we'll just save our project. And then I'll hit play. And we should still get that same error that I was seeing the last time for the infinite loop. And once that shows up again, I'll show you how we can solve that, or we can go through how we can solve that, because I have an inkling as to why. I have a feeling as to why that is happening. So I'll grab this furniture and I'll grab this guy. I'll just move it like so. And I'll say save. And then I'll quit the application. And then if I hit play again, everything should be back to normal. And if I hit load, I should get that same error again. Now, there's still quite a bit of static mesh in the scene that I need to set to movable, but I'm not going to worry about them. The thing I want to worry about now is this down below here, this infinite loop detected blueprint. And what I think is happening is this. I think because this scene was composed together using Datasmith and things are kind of nested within each other, I believe that's why we're getting the infinite loop. Because if you click on this right now, it'll take us to the game instance, and the game instance is actually what has the code that's causing the infinite loop. So if I go to sequence, and it's going to open in the background, let me just close out of this, and I'll just drag this down. And it's essentially telling me that there's an infinite loop happening. If I hit show, it's showing me that it is off of the button save, and that's where the call stack is from the button save. So that button that we have in our WBP layout. So there's this button. That's what's causing the problem. And I believe the problem has to do with how our scene is composed. So there are a few ways that we can solve this problem. We can go through it this way, or we can actually look at a scene that I've put together that doesn't involve using Datasmith at all. But what I want to do here is to try to solve this problem with Datasmith, first of all, and see if we can get anywhere with that. Okay, if we look through our outliner, we can kind of scroll all the way to the top, and we can see that all of our objects are nested into some of this Datasmith scene actor. I have a suspicion that this is what is causing a lot of our problems. So what I'm going to try to do is just delete this Datasmith scene actor and see if that will improve our scene. If not, then I'll take you into a new level that I've created, so that we can take a look at all of the logic that we've created and to see that the logic is actually working and there's nothing wrong with our code. So I'll go ahead and just delete some of these. So I'll delete that. And then I'll keep scrolling down. I'll try to find all of them and just delete them. So this may take me a while. So I'll just go through, delete, 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 delete. And then I'm probably going to delete all the level sequences in here as well, just to make sure. And then probably remove the grass as well. Actually, I'll leave that grass for now and see if that is also causing some kind of problem. It may actually be the grass itself causing the problem. That could be it, because it's also uh, we'll see. Just let's go through this. This is also very good for you to see, because this is a way of solving problems within Unreal, especially when you're actually writing blueprint scripts or just debugging your scene, so to speak, to find the problems. So we'll start with that, and then we'll delete, 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 and then delete that as well. More, delete that. Supply start. Just scrolling through to try to find all the things that we need to delete. Okay, looks like we deleted all of it. And now the thing we have to do is to try to save and then run the application again and try to perform the task we were trying to perform before, meaning the saving and loading, and see if we still get the same error. So I'm going to play. And then I'll move the furniture again. Just make a couple of movements like so. And I'll say save. Then I'll quit the application. And then I'll play it again and say load. So we're still getting that infinite loop error that's still showing up down below. One last thing I'm going to try is to see if deleting the foliage instance foliage mesh actor that we have on the outside, meaning I'm going to try to delete the grass here with all of the meshes attached to it and see if that is going to solve our problem. So I'll just say I'll just bookmark my position here so I can get back to it quickly. So if you hit Control 1, it's going to save a bookmark for you in at that location. So I'm just going to come outside here and delete the grass. And then I think that one's fine. So let's see if that works. So I'll do a save. Saving now. And then I'm going to just hit play again and see if that works. So I'll move the furniture again, grab that and move it like so, move it forward, and then say save scene, and then quit, and then play again, and I'll say load scene. We still get that error again. And you can see it's all the way at the bottom. It's still giving us that error. So there must be something in the scene that's causing us to go through an infinite loop. There are several things that we can debug through all of this, but it will take forever to kind of go through all of this in this video. And I think this is one of the challenges you face in Unreal Engine. You have to kind of debug things. It doesn't mean our code isn't working, as I'll show you in a moment. Our code that we've written in our game instance functions just fine. It's just the composition of this level and the way things are built in this level. And my guess is that Datasmith is kind of interfering with this level because of the way I imported geometry into this level. I use Datasmith. So my advice is, if you're going to be using this, try to bring in your static meshes without using Datasmith. It's the best way that I've tested this with, and I think that is the optimal way to do this without running into that call stack problem we're running into that's causing the infinite loop. And to illustrate that, what I'm going to be doing now is just showing you a different level. That's just a simple level that I put together. And that level doesn't have all of the fancy geometry we have in here. It's just a bunch of boxes. And I'll open that level right now. So it's called the layout test level. And if I just open that, and what I have in here is just a bunch of boxes, one cylinder in the middle, and I'll just for the sake of it, so you don't feel like, oh, maybe I made this up and this is functioning properly. That's why I'm showing you this. No, this is just a regular level. Nothing fancy. I just opened a new level and I just dropped a bunch of things in there so that you can see how this code is actually working. So now if we come in here, and what I've done here also, I put a play start here so that we'll be facing forward. So if I hit play now, and I just kind of look left or right or something, and I start grabbing this guys. By the way, if you want to rotate objects at runtime, each space bar lets you cycle through all of the transforms. So you can do rotate, and then if you want to just navigate down again and just drop yourself below, the Q key and the E key can help you navigate. But once you get the project, you can open this project up and you'll be able to kind of see all the things that I'm showing you right now. You'll be able to navigate your way around. So I'm just going to go back to the move tool, and then I'll just move a couple of things around. I'll just move this cylinder around. I'll grab this, I'll move it here, I'll move it over there so that we have this kind of setup. Now I'm going to save the scene and then quit. So this is the moment of truth now. So if we start the simulation again. So this is just simulating running the application. And now when I hit the load button, we should get the desired effect. So let's just see. Ah, so the error we're getting now is just showing us that we haven't made all of this movable. So, again, it's good that you're seeing this multiple times. You have to make sure all of the actors you want to move, the static meshes you want to move, are set to movable. So we'll do that now. So I'm not going to select the plane that's on the ground, but I'll just set them to movable now. And then one last time, we'll try this again, and this should work. So let's just hit play again. We'll select this, we'll move it out. I'll just hit the E key to raise me above, spacebar to rotate a little, and then grab this and move it out like so, and just maybe something like that. Move this in here, move that back, and move it a little closer like so. And then I'll hit save and then quit. And now we're going to start it over again. Start the scene, look around, make sure everything's back to normal, and then we'll hit load, and boom, there we go. We see everything is working the way it should. The scene's loaded, and we have a way to kind of load and save as well. So if I were to select and move things around again, and I say I move this back this way, I move this closer to here next to it, and then I move this back again, and I move maybe this back to the center or something, and I hit save and I quit. Now, and I can just, this is just because our the plane on the ground is not set to movable. That's why we're getting this warning. And I did it on purpose because I didn't want to move the plane on the ground. So I'll close out of that. And if I hit play again and I just look around and I say load scene, you can kind of see that we now have the scene that we saved the last time. So if I hit stop, and I just want to show that one more time, and I hit play, and this time around I'll just jump high and I hit load. You can kind of see everything's back to the position. So this is what I was talking about at the beginning. This is really, really useful because you can write this into you can put this logic into your exe file, and your clients can move things around themselves. At the end of the day, if changes like this are happening where they're moving things around to fit their presentation, you don't want them just calling you and telling you, okay, we need those changes now. Please, can you make those changes and send it to us? Our presentation is in 3 hours. You don't want that. They can move the things around themselves and then hit save it and then load it during their presentation. And what I'll show you is where the save file is typically located. So um, when you grab your just open your project wherever your project is located, and I will show you the location for my project. So in our project, this is where our project is located, and it's usually under saved in your project, and you want to go to save games, and this is where everything, and this is the name. So if you look at this, this is the file. It's a .sav file. That's where everything's saved. So it's game slot underscore 01. If we compare that to, if we go into our, I'll just stop this. If we go into our BP game instance, you can see that the name that we've given to our slot name